The world's best air and space museums. Smithsonian National Air and Space Museum, Chantilly, Virginia. Boeing FB-5 is an American carrier-based fighter of the 1920s used by the U.S. Navy and Marine Corps. The Farman FF-65 Sport is a French-built light biplane with a single engine and tandem seats intended for sport and touring. First flown in 1919, it achieved modest sales at home and abroad in the early 1920s. The Baldwin Red Devil is a series of early pusher configuration aircraft employing steel tube construction designed by Thomas Scott Baldwin in 1911. The Ecker Flying Boat is a 1912 to 1913 American amphibious biplane built by pilot Herman A. Ecker in Syracuse, New York. The Nieuport 28C-1 was a French fighter aircraft used during World War I. It was built by the Nieuport Company and designed by Gustave Delage. As the successor to a successful line of fighters, which included the Nieuport 17, the Nieuport 28 continued the same design philosophy of creating a lightweight and highly maneuverable aircraft. The Benwest Land Tractor Type 12 was one of the first enclosed cockpit tractor configuration aircraft built. The SPAD-16 was tested in 1917 as an update of the earlier SPAD-11 two-seater. While it was not as well liked as the faster Breguet 14A2 and Salmson 2A2, it served with at least 32 escadrilles, and 6 were used by the USA. The Halberstadt CL-4 was one of the most effective ground attack aircraft of World War I. The Caudron G4 is a French biplane with twin engines, widely used during World War I as a bomber. It was the world's first twin-engine aircraft to be widely used, starting in March 1915.
Langley began his interest in aeronautics by focusing on aerodynamic theory. Langley never really focused on the engineering of an airplane in its totality in the same way that the Wright brothers did. The Wrights understood that you needed to not only develop the aerodynamics, but you also had to focus on the control system, the structural design, and the propulsion system. Langley didn't break out the problem in that way and focused largely on the aerodynamics and didn't focus very much on structures or control. And as a result, those key pieces were lacking in his great aerodrome, the full-size airplane. Samuel Pierpont Langley became the secretary of the Smithsonian Institution in 1887 and continued to do research in aeronautics the entire time he was head of the Smithsonian. He developed a series of small gasoline and steam-powered aircraft he called aerodromes, which were unpiloted craft. The most successful was the Aerodrome Number 5 and the Aerodrome Number 6, which flew in 1896. By 1903, he had created what he called the Great Aerodrome, or the Aerodrome A, which was his full-size piloted version of his design. Unfortunately, the smaller ones were very structurally weak, and when Langley increased the size of them, he was doomed to failure. Langley developed a large catapult launching system on the top of a houseboat. On October 7th, in Widewater, Virginia, he made his first attempt with this catapult launching of the airplane, and it crashed miserably. A Washington Post reporter quipped that it looked like a handful of mortar falling into the Potomac. On December 8th, 1903, the airplane had been repaired, and this time closer to Washington, D.C., on the Potomac River, the aircraft was put on top of the houseboat again, and another attempt was made, and again the airplane just simply collapsed upon itself on launching, and the airplane was never attempted to fly again. The pilot on the Langley Aerodrome was Charles Matthews Manley, Langley's assistant. When the aerodrome crashed for the second time in the icy Potomac on December 8, 1903, Manley was in the water, and the wreckage of the airplane was on top of him. He had great difficulty extricating himself. By the time he was removed from the aircraft, he was frozen through from the icy water and had to be revived with a little alcoholic spirits. Langley died in 1906, 3 years after his ill-fated attempt to fly his great aerodrome. The airplane was then rebuilt, actually, in 1914 by Glenn Curtiss, another aeronautical pioneer who was contracted by the Smithsonian to rebuild the airplane and perform research on it. In 1914, a very heavily modified Langley Aerodrome did make some brief flights, and the airplane was then returned to the Smithsonian Institution, and it was put on public display, and it was characterized as the world's first airplane capable of flight. Well, this, of course, outraged the Wright brothers and started a long feud between the Wright family and the Smithsonian Institution, which finally ended in 1948 upon the death of Orville Wright and the bequeathing of the Wright airplane to the Smithsonian Institution. It was put on public display on December 17, 1948, 45 years to the day after the Wright brothers flew their airplane.
The North American P-51D Mustang was a premier long-range, single-seat fighter bomber featuring a Packard-built Rolls-Royce Merlin engine, a distinctive bubble canopy, and 6.50 caliber machine guns. With over 15,000 units built, it was vital to Allied victory in World War II for escorting bombers to Berlin, later serving in the Korean War. The Piper J-3 Cub is an American light aircraft that was built between 1938 and 1947 by Piper Aircraft. Close to 20,000 examples of the Cub were built in the United States. The Grumman G-22 Gulf Hawk II is a specialized civil aerobatic biplane built for pilot Al Williams and was used for air shows and to test new equipment. The Junkers Ju 52/3M is a transport aircraft that was designed and manufactured by German aviation company Junkers, first introduced in 1930. The Booker Bu 133 Jungmeister is an advanced trainer of the Luftwaffe in the 1930s. Little Butch is a historic 1941 monocoupe 110 special aircraft famous for its use in 1940s air shows and aerobatic competitions. Flown by W. Woody Edmondson, the clipped-wing monoplane was nicknamed for its bulldog-like appearance. The Vought OS2U Kingfisher is an American catapult-launched observation floatplane. The OS2U was the main shipboard observation seaplane used by the United States Navy during World War II, and 1,519 of the aircraft were built. The Republic P-47 Thunderbolt is a World War II fighter aircraft produced by the American company Republic Aviation from 1941 through 1945. The Kawanishi N-1K was an Imperial Japanese Navy fighter aircraft. Contemporary pilots and Allied reports praised the N-1K's performance, noting its high speed and maneuverability compared with other Japanese fighters of the period. The Boeing B-29 Superfortress is a retired American four-engined heavy bomber designed by Boeing and flown primarily by the United States during World War II and the Korean War. Enola Gay, a silver-plate version of the Boeing B-29 Superfortress, dropped the atomic bombs on Hiroshima. The Lockheed P-38 Lightning was a versatile twin-engine American fighter of World War II, recognized by its twin-boom design and tricycle landing gear. Primarily used in the Pacific, it excelled in long-range escort, bombing, and reconnaissance. The Horten H-3 is a flying-wing sailplane built by Walter and Reimar Horten in Germany from 1937 to 1944. The Heinkel He-219 Uhu, Eagle Owl, is a night fighter designed and produced by the German aircraft manufacturer Heinkel. It primarily served with the Luftwaffe in the later stages of the Second World War. Operating out of the Mary Baker Engen restoration hangar, the Preservation and Restoration Unit is responsible for the highly specialized restoration and maintenance work necessary to preserve, restore, and display the collection of aviation and space artifacts.